trim, can you tell she's giving like I didn't even grow it out? Trims are for the best, although I hate them. But anyways, thank you for being here today, tonight, tomorrow, next week, next month, next year. I love you all. I'm just saying hey, just to say hey, and to obviously acknowledge my beauty. Y'all know how I go. Okay. Did I tell you guys what I was reading? I told you guys what I was reading, yeah. We are reading Throne of Glass. Let me get off my phone. I'm sorry. I was looking at my other YouTube videos to make sure that it's been a while since I did this. I'm supposed to be doing a roleplay, but I did a roleplay last week and I just don't feel like that right now. I can't. I want to just read my book and multitask and make this video. And so that's what we're finna do. Like I told y'all, I am reading Throne of Glass. Last week I was struggling like, oh, a thorn of glass. Cause y'all know I'm still hooked up on that Accord of Thorn and Roses. Oh my god, I want to have a book club or join a book club. So I am on struggling. I'm on chapter 15 and Selena is if I'm pronouncing it right, because Sarah J. Maas and the E in the name just takes me. Oh no, it's the A. No, it is the E. Actually, I said E because when I first read the first book of A Court of Thorn and Roses, obviously is, the first book's name, I was struggling how to pronounce Feyre's name. How I figured out how to pronounce her name was through TikTok. Best believe I did my research because I was so obsessed and still am obsessed. But so now I'm trying to pronounce these new names in the book, and it's the A's now. It's not E, it's the A's. This girl's name is spelled Celaena. It very well could be Selena, but I don't feel like pronouncing it that way. I want to say Selena. And so, correct me if I'm wrong, girl, but what the hell ever. Selena is just about to complete her first test. We are on page, I want to say 118. Yes, we're on page 118, so that's the one. That's the one. Okay, let's get started. So like I said, Selena is about to complete her first test. Suddenly, Selena found herself standing at the white line, looking at the vast length of the room before her. Some of the men chuckled, albeit quietly, and she kept her head held high as she reached over her opposite side of the bullseye where she aimed the arrow met its mark. As she reached for her last arrow, she heard one of the competitors, a red-haired mercenary named Renault, snigger. She clenched her bow tightly enough for the wood to groan and pulled back her final shot. The target was little more than a blur of color, so far back that its bullseye was a grain of sand in the vastness of the room. She couldn't see the little dot in its center, the dot that no one had yet to touch, even Kane. Selena's arm trembled with effort as she pulled the string back a bit farther and fired. The arrow hit the absolute center, obliterating the black dot. They stopped laughing. No one said anything to her when she stalked away from the line and tossed her bow onto the cart. Joel, and that's what also another name I've been struggling with. Joel. C-H-A-O-L. I'm just gonna ignore that A like I did Selena and say Joel, cause girl. And honestly, it'd make more sense to pronounce it as Joel if it was spelled C-H-O-A-L. Joel, like almost like Cole. You know, you have to just pick your battles, guys, honestly. Joel only scolded at her. Obviously, she hadn't been that inconspicuous, but Dorian smiled. She sighed and joined the competitors, waiting for the competition to finish, keeping well away from all of them. When their marks were compared by Brullo himself, one of the army soldiers, not young Baylor, wound up being eliminated. But though she hadn't lost by any means, Selena absolutely could not stand the feeling that she hadn't really won anything at all. Chapter 16. Despite her attempt to keep her breathing steady, Selena gasped for air as she ran beside Joel in the game park. If he was winded, he didn't show it, other than that gleam of sweat on his face and the dampness of his white shirt. They ran toward a hill, its top still shrouded in morning mist. Her legs buckled at the sight of the incline, and her stomach rose in her throat. Selena let out a loud gasp to get Joel's attention before she slowed to a stop and braced her hands against a tree trunk. She took a shuddering breath, holding on tightly to the tree as she vomited. She hated the warmth of the tears that leaked from her eyes, but couldn't wipe them away as she heaved again, gagging. She leaned her brow into her upper arm, calming her breathing, willing her body to ease. It had been 3 days since the first test, 10 since her arrival in Rifthole, and she was still horribly out of shape. The next elimination was in 4 days, and though training had resumed as usual, she had started waking up a little earlier than the normal. She would not lose to Kane or Renault or any of them. Done, Joel asked. She lifted her head to give him a withering glare, but everything spun, dragging her down with it, and she retched again. I told you not to eat before we left. Are you done being smug? Are you done vomiting your guts up? For the time being, she snapped. Perhaps I won't be so courteous next time, and I'll just vomit all over you instead. If you can catch me, he said with a half smile. She wanted to punch the smirk off his face, but as she took a step, her knees shook and she put her hands against the tree again, waiting for the retching to renew. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw him looking at her back, most of which was exposed by her damp white undershirt. She stood. Are you enjoying looking at my scars? He sucked on his lower lip for a moment. When did you get those? She knew he meant the 3 enormous lines that ran down her back. When do you think? She said. He didn't reply, and she looked up at the canopy of leaves above them. A morning breeze sent them all shuddering, ripping a few from where they clung to the skeletal branches. Those 3. I received my first day in Endovir. What did you do to deserve it? Deserve it? She laughed sharply. No one deserves to be whipped like an animal. He opened his mouth, but she cut him off. I arrived in Endovir, and they dragged me into the center of the camp and tied me between the whipping posts. 21 lashes. You know, I'm actually having thoughts while I'm reading, and I feel like I might just host like a book club on my channel. last name I cannot recall right now. And my first thoughts were like, love interests, right? Because it's just always insinuated that way. And I cannot think or even like suspect, or I'm saying, and this was my first thoughts in the beginning, I couldn't suspect who she would end up with, because in the first few lines in the book, they'll always tell you the ending type of, like, I don't know if that makes sense. I feel like when you get to the end of a book, oftentimes for me at least, I go back to the beginning to read it, like the first few pages, and then be like, yeah, I could have saw that coming if I like paid attention more. And I feel like she's gonna end up with one of them, but Dorian doesn't seem like a viable option as of right now, as of this chapter 16. So right now we're on Joel, and it seems like Joel is the more viable option, but Joel is fighting his instincts, and we're just gonna see how that plays out, because why do you keep coming to have breakfast, lunch, and dinner with me in my room? 21 lashes. She stared at him without entirely seeing him as the ash-gray sky turned into the bleakness of Endovir, and the hiss of the wind became the sighing of the slaves. That was before I had befriended any of the other slaves, and I spent the first night wondering if I would make it until morning. If my back would become infected, or if I would bleed out and die before I knew what was happening. No one helped you. Only in the morning, a young woman slipped me a tin of salve while we were waiting in line for breakfast. I never got to thank her. Later that day, 4 overseers raped and killed her. She clenched her hands into her fists as her eyes stung. The day I snapped, I stopped by their section of the mines to repay them for what they did to her. Something frozen rushed through her veins. They died too quickly. But you are a woman in Endovir, Chow said, his voice rough and quiet. No one ever. He trailed off, unable to form the word. She gave him a slow, bitter smile. They were afraid of me to begin with, and after the day I almost touched the wall, none of them dared to come too close to me. But if one guard tried to get too friendly, well, he'd become the example that reminded the others I could easily snap again if I felt like it. The wind stirred around them, ripping strands of hair from her braid. She didn't need to voice her other suspicion that perhaps somehow Arabin had bribed the guards in Endovir for her safety. We each survive in our own way. Selena didn't understand the softness in the look he gave her, and he nodded. She only stared at him for a moment longer before she burst into a run up toward the hill where the first rays of sunshine began to peek through. So right there, it's like she didn't understand the softness in the look he gave her as he nodded. She only stared at him a moment longer and then ran off, because it's like, you're confusing me. You're confusing me. You hate me, but you give me these looks. You come to my room to have lunch, breakfast, and dinner. And it's like, what did I do to deserve 21 lashes from a whip? Please, don't even get me started on that one. The following afternoon, the champions stood gathered around Brullo, who lectured them on different weapons and the other nonsense she learned years ago and didn't need to hear it again. She was just contemplating whether she could sleep while standing up when, from the corner of her eye, a sudden movement by the balcony doors caught her attention. Selena turned just in time to see one of the larger champions, one of the discharged soldiers, shove a nearby guard, knocking him to the ground. The guard's head hit the marble with a crack, and he was instantly unconscious. She didn't dare to move. None of the champions did, as the man hurtled to the door toward the gardens and escaped. Pochol and his men moved so fast that the fleeing champion didn't have time to touch the glass door before an arrow went clean through his throat. The problem with reading out loud to you guys is that I'm so focused in my brain of pronouncing the words correctly and trying to take my time and not stumble over my words that I don't even know what I'm reading. And so I'm confused as to what the heck just happened. She was just contemplating whether sentences in Sarah J. Maas books. Like, I get you're trying to explain things in detail, but the run-on sentences are actually really getting to me, and I never thought I'd be ever saying this. Because you know, when you are in school and you're like, I'm never gonna use this information, I'm never gonna use 3.14, the square of pi and shit, I'm never gonna use this stuff, I'm never ever gonna use this. And here I am, remembering what I was taught about run-on sentences. This is not an easy to read book, honestly. Just off the run-on sentences alone, and that's it. Other than that, it's fine, but like, I'm struggling because it's like I don't know where it ends, I don't know where it starts, and then my dyslexia be thinking a comma is a period, so then it's like nearby guard knocking him to the ground, like okay. So apparently they were about to start their training, their group training, and a champion, one of the discharged soldiers, okay, so they're from the army, shove a nearby guard, knocking him to the ground. The guard's head hit the marble with a crack and he was instantly unconscious. That's crazy, man. A crack to the marble. Damn. Rest in peace to him. Or, I don't know, he's unconscious, so we won't know yet. Silence fell, and half of the guards encircled the champions, hands on their swords, while the others, Joel included, rushed to the dead champion and fallen guard. Yeah, he's dead. I knew it. Silence fell, and half of the guards encircled the champions, hands on their swords, while the others, Joel included, rushed to the dead champion and fallen guard. Bows groaned as the archers on the mezzanine pulled their strings taut. Selena kept still, as did Knox, who was standing close behind her. That Knox guy, I don't like him. I'm keeping an eye out for that guy, I swear. Anyways, as did Knox, who was standing close behind her. Like, why are you behind me? Why are you always trying to talk to me? Like, I don't know, guys. I'm trying to predict, because when it comes out later in the books, mind you, this is a book series, and I'll be tuned in for book 2. I am trying to keep an eye out for potential plot lines that might show up later. Okay. Who was standing close behind her? Okay. One wrong movement and a spooked guard could kill her. Even Kane didn't breathe too deeply through the wall of champions, guards, and their weapons. Selena beheld Joel kneeling by the unconscious guard. No one touched the fallen champion, who lay face down, his hand still outstretched toward the glass door. Sven had been his name, though she didn't know why he'd been expelled from the army. Gods above, Knox breathed so softly that his lips barely moved. They just killed him. She thought about telling him to shut up, but even snapping at him seems risky. Some of the other champions were murmuring to each other, but no one dared to take a step. I knew they were serious about not letting us leave, but Knox swore, and she felt him glance sidelong at her. I was granted immunity by my sponsor. He tracked me down and said I wouldn't go to prison if I lost the competition. At that point, she knew he was speaking more to himself, and she didn't respond. Knox stopped talking. She stared and stared at the dead champion. What had made Sven risk it, and why here, right now? There were still 3 days until their second test. What had made this moment so special? The day she snapped at Endovier, she hadn't been thinking about freedom. No, she'd picked the time and place and started swinging. She never meant to escape. The sunlight shone through the doors, illuminating the champion's splattered blood like stained glass. Maybe he'd realized he had no chance of winning, and that this kind of death was far better than returning to whatever place he'd come from. If he'd wanted to escape, he would have waited until dark, and when he was away from everyone at the competition, Sven had wanted to prove a point. She understood, and understood only because of that day. She had come within a fingertip of touching the wall at Endovier. A darling could take their freedom. It could destroy their lives and beat and break and whip them. It could force them into ridiculous contests, but criminal or not, they were still human. Dying rather than playing in the king's game was the only choice left to him. Still staring at his outstretched hand, forever pointing toward an unreachable horizon, Selena had a silent